Welcome back to Gen X Horror, your weekly dose of analog terror and forgotten nightmares. We're here every week, trading therapy sessions for VHS binges and chasing childhood trauma with Tang and Totinos. Today we're diving into 15 influential horror flicks from 1973 to 1988, when masters like Cronenberg, Carpenter, and Romero ruled the drive-ins and VHS shelves with an iron fist of pure horror. Stick around till the end and we'll drop a killer modern throwback that captures all that retro horror we grew up with. Come on, man, let's get into it.
They say that nightmares are dreams perverted.
We're going to start with 1973's Messiah of Evil. Do you remember when those late-night cable discoveries, they felt like forbidden channels from another dimension? Messiah of Evil is exactly that kind of sweet chaos you'd stumble across at 2 a.m., wondering if you were actually awake or having some sort of psychotic break. Super hottie Arletty travels to a creepy coastal town searching for her missing artist's father, only to discover the locals are slowly transforming into bloodthirsty cannibals and worship some ancient sea deity who seems wildly demanding of their time. This surreal masterpiece was shot for around 90 grand and still managed to create an atmosphere so unsettling it's like a soft surrealist painting that's come to life. It has hammer horror elements, but the shots honestly read like a beautifully Argento shot slasher. So many scenes could be standalone pictures in a gallery. Many of the extras used were unemployed NASA workers for some reason, and while that isn't in the plot anywhere, I found that incredibly interesting. How beautiful is this scene?
Hey, what the hell's going on, Sheriff?
You know what I do, boy. Let's go.
I taking me no place.
We're going to stay in 1973 with The Crazies. George Romero wasn't content with just revolutionizing zombie cinema. He had to go and make us paranoid about our own government as well. At least more paranoid than we probably already are. The Crazies drops a military biological weapon on the small town of Evans City, Pennsylvania, turning ordinary folks into homicidal maniacs while hazmat-suited soldiers shoot first and ask questions pretty much never, honestly. What makes this so brilliantly awesome is you can never tell who's actually infected and who's just having a really bad day dealing with martial law, and honestly, that's a fair question. Romero made this nightmare for just about 275 grand, and it plays like a documentary of social collapse that feels a little too close to home in 2025. This is the movie that taught us the real monsters aren't always the infected townspeople. They're the guys in the suits making decisions from bunkers hundreds of miles away, and the cure is sometimes worse than the disease. Maybe not in this case. The burning house at the beginning of the film was a bit of a serendipity for the film crew. The local fire department was burning down an old house to practice putting out the fire and agreed to let the filmmakers set up and film the event. No stuntmen at all were used in the entire production, which seems insane.
We're all concerned with Evans City, Mr. Hawks.
If we have to push the button, we just say the weapon went off.
This is where the worst begins. This is where we must stop. For beyond is the work of madness.
We're going to move ahead just 1 year to 1974, and we're going to talk about Deranged. And if you thought Ed Gein's story couldn't get any more disturbing, then you clearly hadn't watched Deranged yet, whose directors decided to adapt the Wisconsin serial killer's tale with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the face. Robert Blossom plays Ezra Cobb, a mama's boy who digs up corpses to keep his dear old mother company, gradually escalating to murdering women to create the perfect household companion. I mean, if Messiah of Evil taught us anything, it's that aesthetics matter. What sets this apart from any other Gein-inspired films like Psycho or even Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's its documentary-style narration and the unsettling commitment to showing you exactly how a human being can construct furniture from another human being. This was made for about 200 grand, and this Canadian-American co-production proves that sometimes the most effective horror comes from simply presenting madness without ever trying to explain it away. Harvey Keitel and Christopher Walken both auditioned for the role of Ezra Cobb in New York. Tom Carr felt they were a bit too young for the part, though, and Roberts Blossom was the last audition that Carr had on the docket. And man, he played it perfect. Let me just break in here a second. I didn't mention that this is chronological at all, but it's from 1973 to 1988. And also, I'm playing with the transition. I'm doing a little VCR analog kind of thing that I think is fun. I always struggle with the transitions from scene to scene, but let me know if that's horrible in the comments. What do? We do this? Drop them in the comments below. Welcome to my editing bay as well. All right, let's go.
Martin, another kind of terror.
The film Martin came out in 1977. Leave it to George Romero to take the vampire genre and completely flip it on its bashed and bloodied head with Martin. A film that asked the uncomfortable question, what if vampires were just really disturbed men with serious psychological problems? Our title character, a teenage boy who may or may not be an 84-year-old vampire, injects his victims with a sedative before drinking their blood, and there's no messy fangs needed here. Romero stripped away all the gothic romance and supernatural elements, leaving us with a painfully realistic portrait of a delusional killer in 1970s suburban Pittsburgh, a setting that somehow makes everything even more depressing. This was shot for about 80 grand, and this script of ambiguous horror plays like a social worker's case study crossed with a cerebral slasher film, and it's infinitely more terrifying because you're never quite sure if Martin is a monster or just a very sick kid who took emo to the 100th degree. Romero's original script for the film had the character of Martin as an older person who was actually established as a vampire but still struggling to live in a modern world. However, when Romero saw John Ampla's performance on stage, he rewrote the character completely with Ampla in mind, making Martin a younger and more innocent character. And again, much like Robert's Blossom, that was the move, man. This was a fantastic movie.
Nice to watch them. I watch them.
All around her, people are dying, and only Rose knows why.
You gotta come quick. You gotta come quick and
Rabid came out in 1977. David Cronenberg takes the standard 1968 zombie genre and adds in loads more body horror and a porn star. Did anyone even thank him for that yet? Marilyn Chambers stars as Rose, a motorcycle accident victim who receives experimental plastic surgery that transforms her armpit into a phallic stinger that turns people into foam-mouthed rage zombies. The pitch meeting must have been epic for this. What starts as a medical horror story quickly spirals into a pandemic nightmare as Rose's condition spreads throughout Montreal, turning the city into a quarantine zone filled with rabid maniacs. Cronenberg made this twisted tale for around 560 grand, proving that sometimes the most effective scares come from making the human body itself the enemy. This to me is Pete Cronenberg unleashed. Last checked, and know in your heart I'm not checking this daily, adjusted, this is the highest grossing Canadian film of all time. And if you've seen it, you know why. The subway scene alone is epic.
Shooting down the victims is as good a way of handling them as we have got.
And us away from her at this stage would send Nella over into the deep end.
My daughter's been beaten severely and scratched and bitten, and her mother did it.
1979's The Brood, and just when you thought Cronenberg couldn't get any weirder than armpit vampires, he goes and creates The Brood, a film about how psychotherapy literally births monsters from human rage. Oliver Reed, here's a story about Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed in this production was bet that he couldn't walk from one bar to another completely nude in the freezing cold. He was arrested for that stunt. Little behind the scenes. Oliver Reed plays Dr. Raglan, a psychiatrist whose revolutionary technique causes patients to manifest their psychological trauma as physical ailments. Which sounds like a great idea until Samantha Egger starts giving birth to murderous dwarf-like children from her fury. Which is a weird place to give birth from. The film follows Art Hindle as he desperately tries to protect his daughter from his increasingly unhinged ex-wife and her army of rage babies who look like angry homicidal Cabbage Patch Kids. This one was made for about $1.4 million, topping our budget so far, and following the success of Rabid, this deeply personal nightmare was reportedly Cronenberg's way of processing his own bitter divorce. And sometimes the best horror comes from our most painful real-life experiences, and the result is a film that makes family therapy literally a blood sport. We're going to stay right in 1979 with Phantasm. Don Coscarelli was just 23 years old when he created Phantasm, and it's a film that plays like someone tried to explain a reoccurring nightmare to a teenager with a camera and a budget of about $300,000. The plot follows teenager Mike as he uncovers a conspiracy involving the sinister tall man, played by super creepy Angus Scrimm, who's stealing corpses and shrinking them into hooded dwarves to work as slaves on his alien planet, and that sounds super efficient. What makes this mind-bender work is Coscarelli's refusal to explain anything. We get flying silver spheres that drill through heads, and you all remember that scene. Interdimensional portals and mausoleums, and a villain who can shapeshift and teleport for reasons that are never really clear. And to be honest, watching this feels like a lighthearted H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, and it plays with interdimensional things and supernatural tones, and minus all the sex and debauchery that goes with Lovecraft movies, it's pretty close. Although the one bed scene it does have is voted as one of the top 100 scariest movie moments by Bravo, before Bravo became the Real Housewives and Bachelor channel.
Phantasm.
Come here!
He was raised in isolation,
You're a bad boy.
instructed in fear.
You're evil and you must be punished.
1980 gave us Don't Go in the House. And if you ever wondered what would happen if Norman Bates had access to a flamethrower and daddy issues instead of mommy issues, then Don't Go in the House is the deeply disturbing answer to that question. Don Grimaldi plays Donnie Kohler, a mama's boy who decides the best way to deal with women is to chain them up in his fireproof special room and torch them while wearing his mother's dress. I mean, is that an actual method we all missed? I tend to just lean into the silent treatment that no one notices. But this is hands down one of the most mean-spirited entries in the psycho killer subgenre, in my opinion, with the protagonist so thoroughly broken that you almost feel bad for him. I mean, almost. Until he starts barbecuing innocent women. Made for around $250,000 during the height of the slasher boom, this nasty little film shows that sometimes the most effective horror comes from showing us exactly how damaged people damage other people. Which could be a callback to The Brood's overall tone, now that I'm saying it out loud.
Don't go in the house.
What about filling it with silver bullets?
Oh, sure. Silver bullets are fire. It's the only way to get rid of it.
The Howling came out in 1981. Joe Dante took the werewolf genre and injected it with enough paranoia and really dark humor to create The Howling, a film that treats being a werewolf like a self-help group addiction. Dee Wallace plays Karen White, a TV news anchor who suffers a traumatic encounter with a serial killer and gets sent to a remote therapy retreat that actually turns out to be populated entirely by werewolves trying to mainstream into human society, and holy crap, is that an amazing premise. What makes this brilliant is Dante's take on 1980s therapy culture, where everyone's got a syndrome and every problem has a support group, even being a bloodthirsty full moon beast. Made for $1.5 million with groundbreaking transformation effects, this film launched a franchise and proved that werewolf movies could be smart, and they could be funny, and they could also be terrorizing all at once. Plus, it's got more inside jokes and horror movie references than you could shake a silver bullet at. Literally. Making it the perfect film for genre fans who like when things are somewhat grounded in a little bit of plausibility.
12 men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice.
This is going to be everyone's favorite, I guarantee it. I mean, I can't guarantee it, who am I? It's 1982's The Thing. It's my favorite. John Carpenter traumatized an entire generation with this one. Kurt Russell leads an ensemble cast of researchers who discover that one of them has been replaced by a shape-shifting alien that can perfectly mimic any living organism. And the only way to tell who's human is to wait until someone starts sprouting tentacles or extra heads, and generally by then it's too late for everyone involved. What makes this the most core GENX movie memory is the escalating paranoia as the men realize anyone could be the creature, turning every conversation into a potential death sentence and every blood test into Russian roulette. And this was made for about $15 million with jaw-dropping practical effects by Rob Bottin. This film bombed at the box office because audiences in 1982 likely wanted E.T. to phone home, not burst out of someone's chest cavity in a shower of gore. The result is a masterpiece of tension and body horror and gets more terrifying every time you watch it. The Thing was in heavy rotation on late night TV all through the 80s, and we were better for it.
Why did you watch it, Max? Business reasons. Sure. What about the other reasons?
Videodrome came out in 1983, and David Cronenberg predicted the future of media consumption and somehow made it even more disturbing than reality, which is saying something compared to TikTok trends and Instagram influencers that are running around these days. James Woods plays perfectly, I might add, Max Wren, a sleazy cable TV programmer who discovers Videodrome, a mysterious broadcast signal showing what appears to be real torture and murder. What starts out as a conspiracy thriller quickly becomes a full-blown body horror nightmare as Max begins hallucinating, growing more or less a VCR slot in his stomach, and losing his grip on what's real and what's television. Andy Warhol called the movie a clockwork orange of the 1980s. Made for $5.95 million, this flick explores how media literally rewires and influences our brains, turning us into walking receivers for whatever signal is the strongest. And in Max's case, that signal wants him to commit murder. Sweet, sweet murder. David Cronenberg has said that everything that happens in the film is really taking place until Max meets Barry Convex at the spectacular optical front. After that, the director states that things become more complicated, but he won't specify as to how. The TV station Civic TV is patterned after City TV, a Toronto television station that showed softcore porn as part of its late-night programming. One of Max Wren's partners is called Moses, and that's a direct reference to City TV founder Moses Namir.
See you in Pittsburgh.
Herbert West is at the top of his class in medical school.
How can you teach such dribble? These people are here to learn, and you're closing their minds before they even have a chance.
Re-Animator came out in 1985, and Jeffrey Combs delivers a career-defining performance as Herbert West, a medical student whose serum can reanimate dead tissue, which he discovers by bringing his roommate's cat back to life as a hissing murderous zombie. I mean, what happened to starting with just mice? What follows is an escalating series of reanimation experiments that turn Miskatonic University's morgue, that's a t-shirt I'd buy actually, into a battleground between the living and the dead. And the recently deceased, who are really pissed off about their new current situation. And related, Miskatonic is the same facility used as Cyberdyne in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Made for just $900,000, this film launched the careers of Gordon, Combs, and producer Brian Yuzna, while proving that Lovecraft's material could work as outrageous splatter comedy without losing its essential weirdness. The result is a film that's a little medical horror and a little Three Stooges routines, where severed heads give BJs and headless bodies stumble around like they're looking for their car keys. Or their preoccupied heads, I guess.
What are you thinking? How do you feel? You?
In the dark of the night, something strange is going on.
The Return of the Living Dead came out in 1985. Dan O'Bannon wasn't content to just write Alien. He had to go ahead and create the definitive zombie punk rock comedy that would make brains, the official catchphrase of the undead. When two doofus medical supply warehouse workers accidentally release a military chemical that reanimates corpses, the resulting zombie outbreak hits a group of punk rockers in a Louisville cemetery like a mosh pit colliding with a funeral. But honestly, that's kind of the whole plot beginning to end. What makes this the pinnacle of zombie movies is it would be O'Bannon's decision to make his zombies fast and intelligent and specifically craving brains because it's the only thing that stops the pain of being dead. And finally, motivation that makes sense. Some of the zombie extras were paid a bonus to eat real calf brains in the film. Dan O'Bannon ate some raw calf brains himself right in front of them to show that he wouldn't ask them to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself. This one was made for $4 million, and this film created the template for zombie comedy, while delivering some of the most quotable dialogue in horror history and a soundtrack that perfectly captures the anarchy spirit of mid-80s punk. This is the movie that taught us zombies could be funny without being stupid, and that the best way to survive the apocalypse is with a great sense of humor and an absolute banger playlist.
Sorry, I have 3 other interviews to do before this party's over.
Yeah, if they're not working on something that'll change the world as we know it.
They say they are.
Yeah, but they're lying.
Guys, let's talk about 1986's The Fly. David Cronenberg took a 1950s B-movie about a scientist with a fly head and transformed it into the most heartbreaking body horror love story ever filmed. This movie made me fall madly in love with Gina Davis as well, but you won't find that on the VHS back cover. Jeff Goldblum plays Seth Brundle, a role originally declined by Michael Keaton, a brilliant and awkward scientist who invents a teleportation device and decides to test it on himself, accidentally fusing his DNA with a common housefly in the process. And this is something we've checked for ever since. What follows is a devastating chronicle of physical and mental deterioration as Seth slowly transforms into something that's part human, part insect, and entirely tragic. Made for $15 million with Oscar-winning makeup effects by Chris Walas, this film works as both a metaphor for aging, disease, and the loss of identity, while delivering some of the most genuinely disturbing transformation sequences ever put to film. Cronenberg crafted a love triangle between Seth, his girlfriend Ronnie, played by Gina Davis as said, and Seth's own disintegrating body, and somehow made it both beautiful and absolutely revolting. This movie has some of the most amazing and disturbing scenes and moments that very few Gen Xers can shake. That line, saying I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man and loved it. But now that dream is over and the insect is awake, is one of my favorite movie lines ever.
You still don't get it, do you, boy?
They have recruited the rich and the powerful.
They're running the whole show.
Wake up! They're all about...
As we move in through the 80s, we're at 1988 and it's They Live. John Carpenter made a science fiction action film about Reagan-era capitalism and accidentally created the most quotable B-movie of the 1980s, complete with our likely favorite wrestler, Rowdy Roddy Piper, delivering lines like, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum, which was an addition made by Roddy. While there is no Jake the Snake, Superfly Snuka, or Junkyard Dog, the plot follows a lone drifter who discovers that Earth has been secretly invaded by aliens who use subliminal messages to keep humans docile while they strip the planet's resources. And I'm not talking current events. When our hero finds a pair of special sunglasses that reveal the aliens' true forms and their hidden messages, he embarks on a one-man mission to expose the conspiracy and liberate humanity. Made for just $3 million, this film combines Carpenter's love of B-movie thrills with genuine social commentary, creating a piece of entertainment that works as both mindless action and dead-on political satire. Carpenter brought real homeless folks into the production for several scenes and smaller characters and gave them food as well as paychecks. The result is a movie that kind of feels more relevant today than it did in 1988, proving that sometimes the best way to critique society, that's a text message, is to imagine it's being taken over by literal monsters. Let me get to my social media.
Okay. This one, real fucking ugly.
You know what you should do? Hi, I'm calling in regards to the babysitter flyer posted outside my door.
So here's our bonus title. Remember that feeling of popping in a random VHS rental and discovering something that felt like a lost relic from 1983? Ty West's The House of the Devil is exactly that experience, except it was actually made in 2009 by someone who clearly spent their childhood absorbing every frame of 80s horror cinema. Jocelyn Donahue plays Samantha, a cash-strapped college student who takes a sketchy babysitting gig at a remote Victorian house during a lunar eclipse, only to discover she's not watching a kid. She's the main course in a satanic ritual. West shot this banger on 16mm film, which was an 80s staple, for around $900,000, creating an authentic period piece that doesn't just reference the 80s aesthetic, it perfectly replicates it. From the opening freeze frame credits to the Walkman cement that carries like a security blanket. This is a slow burn terror in the tradition of Messiah of Evil and The Brood, building dread through atmosphere and suffocating paranoia until the final act explodes into the kind of gore-soaked mayhem that would make our Re-Animator cast proud, proving that the spirit of underground 70s and 80s horror is alive and well in the hands of filmmakers who understand that sometimes the old ways are still the best ways. This was promotionally released on VHS in a clamshell box. The last major picture released in that format was A History of Violence in 2005. This movie was shot in just 18 days in a house that was wildly infested with ladybugs, which you can actually see in a few scenes.
It's freezing out here.
Okay.
Are you not the babysitter?
No, I'm not the babysitter. My friend.
These films prove that the period between 1973 and 1988 were absolutely gold for independent horror cinema. These movies were made by filmmakers who had more imagination than money in most cases, and more passion than polish. They had absolutely no fear of pushing boundaries that probably shouldn't have been pushed in some cases. From Cronenberg's body horror nightmares to Romero's social apocalypse visions, these films created a blueprint for genre cinema that we're honestly still following today. While that's almost 2 decades of terror and horror, would you say these specific titles captured that span of time, or are there others that do it for you far better than the ones I mentioned? As always, man, I am all ears waiting to hear recommendations. The top 20 slashers from the comments video was wild fun. It took me a couple weeks to make because a good amount of those I hadn't seen, so I had to take the time to watch them, but I am more enriched for it. So drop in the comments anything you think I missed or was far more representative than what I stated. Thanks for watching all, honestly. Love you. And as always, stay cool.